This show is proudly supported by Habitats at Home, Australia's leading PVC reptile enclosure specialist. Check them out on Instagram and Facebook at Habitats at Home, and be sure to visit habitatsathome.com.au if you're in the market for a new PVC reptile enclosure or other reptile accessories. Massive thanks to Tyson over at Habitats at Home. We'd like to thank our podcast sponsor, Bay, reimagining reptile keeping through innovation. They combine quality, design and function to create high-end 3D printed reptile products. And if you've got a unique setup or problem, they'll craft a custom solution made just for you. Check them out on Instagram at Bay. This show is proudly supported by Dan from Red Earth Reptiles. If you want to drool over some of the best looking green tree pythons in the country, check out Dan on Instagram at red_earth_reptiles. G'day and welcome to Under the Heat Lamp with Joe Mack. Today's episode number 44, and I'm joined by Luke from Beaches Scaly Beasts. How's it going, Luke?
Good, mate. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's a pleasure. I want to say firstly, thank you to you and Jason for your part in the Australian Herpetoculture podcast. I don't think I'd be doing this if it wasn't for you guys sort of laying the way out. So thanks very much for what you did there.
You don't have to say thanks, but I know that Jason and I are loving it from the sidelines. Quite often we'll send a message to and from each other to go, "Oh, that was a good one," or whatever. So, whilst we're smashed with our kids and life and all of it, it's awesome to see somebody pick up the reins. So, yeah, well done. 44. That's a good achievement. What's that? Almost one a week for a year, getting close to. So,
pretty much, yeah. I think I missed a couple of weeks over Chrissy. But apart from that, yeah, it's been pretty much one a week for almost a year. So I think I started about mid-June, so I'm looking forward to it. And the train's rolling on. We're still doing it. So
it's awesome, dude.
I guess thanks. I guess just a standard sort of procedure. If anyone's unfamiliar with you, can you just give us a bit of a rundown on your history with reptiles?
Yeah, I'm one of those stereotypical people, I suppose, always chasing lizards and stuff as a young fella and interested in dinosaurs, that whole very stereotypical story. I know my great-grandmother used to get the poops with me, ripping up her rose garden petals and stuff like that, pretending they're dinosaur eggs and all sorts. But I probably got a pretty decent interest in reptiles when my parents bought a property that backed on to kind of like a little bit of Sydney escarpment, and there was just constantly like leaf-tailed geckos and frogs and blueies and the occasional snake kind of cruising through the yard. So I think Mum started to get annoyed at me as a 11-year-old keeping geckos in Chinese containers under the bed and all sorts of stuff that I probably shouldn't have been doing. But fast forward probably about 10 years or so or thereabouts, and kind of go through the typical teenage stuff and forget about animals and the rest of it. And I actually got an Asian house gecko in the house, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." Caught it, put it in like a little critter keeper tank, fed it some crickets, and just enjoyed it. And then it escaped, and I was kind of like, "Oh, well, let's go and see if we can find another one of these things." And I was Googling stuff and realized that, actually you can own these things properly, and there's licensing, and the world just kind of opened up for me, and the snowball just started from there. And I kind of got collectoritis like we all do, and had a little bit of everything. And I don't think that's left me. Like, I've still got a little bit of everything here, so I kind of find it hard to focus on one thing really well. I'm kind of likes to have my hands in a lot of pies, I suppose. So yeah, but that's been probably the last 12 or 13 years of my life, kind of just owning things, breeding things, playing with things, changing the rooms, doing this, doing that, inventing new enclosures, or changing up how they look. Run a YouTube channel that seems to be somewhat successful to a degree. A couple hundred videos out there for people to go and see and follow along the journey and stuff like that. Obviously did the podcast with Jason for a couple of years, so popped a bit of content out there for everyone to kind of enjoy. I kind of fell into all of that, but I suppose that's my history in reptiles in a nutshell, so to speak.
I think sounds summed up pretty well there. I do want to get into the YouTube stuff. You say you sort of fell into that, so how did that come about?
So I have to blame Cooper for that one. So if anybody's not familiar with Coop's Reptiles, he messaged me years ago going, "Hey, do you mind if I come around and point a camera in your face and show up a bunch of your animals and stuff?" And I was kind of a bit nervous about it, but said, "Yeah, go nuts." And after he did that, and I kind of saw that people were enjoying the video and stuff, I thought, well, maybe I should put a bit more of this, bit more thought into this, and start putting out a few of my own videos. And it's kind of good for myself because it creates a timeline that I can go back to look at and go, oh, wow, like how horrible was that enclosure? Or, gee, I should have given that snake a bigger enclosure, or whatever it may be. But it stamps it, right? Like it's like a timestamp in life to be able to go back and look at. And it's good to be able to kind of see your own progression, your own learning, just all that sort of stuff. And I didn't have to do any of that. I didn't have to pick up a camera, but I think there's so many people asking me questions after Cooper's initial video that I thought maybe I'll start putting a bit of work into it.
Yeah, sure. And so, well, do you remember your first video?
I think the first one was like a DIY pond filter where you could barely hear me over the cicadas. And I was just like in a towel, like, because I got out of the pool and I'm like stitching this thing together in a garage floor. Like, it was horrible. Probably still up there, to be honest.
Proper ghetto.
Horrible. But it was something to the degree of that. Maybe I should hide that before people go looking for it. But yeah, it was. Well, don't look at the first 20 or so at least, I reckon.
Well, that's another thing too, is like you can not only look at like the progression of your keeping and your animals and whatnot, but you can look at the progression of the content that you were making too. And obviously it got better towards the end, or towards now, I guess.
I still wouldn't say it's fantastic, but at the same time, the bones are there. If people want to see animal content, it's pretty genuine. I suppose it's not far-fetched sort of stuff. It's not clickbaity. It's
no. I think it's very genuine. I think that creates a lot of allure. It's fun to watch because it is genuine. It's so realistic. Like I don't know how many of your DIY videos of all sorts that I've watched and taken inspiration from. But did you have a bit of a hands-on sort of background, or did your sort of DIY skills come through the reptile stuff?
Look, I worked in construction for many years, in various sorts of roles. At the time where I was probably like peak into reptiles, I worked for a hardware shop, so I had pretty good access to timber and materials and all that sort of stuff with a discount on top, which obviously helps.
Dangerous.
I do miss the days of the Philips light globes where they were like $6 for 2 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I've always been into art in some form. So as a kid and stuff, lots of drawing, lots of painting, that sort of stuff, which definitely lends itself to this. I probably don't do too much of that these days, but I don't like idle hands. So if I can be doing or creating with my hands, whether it be a 3-dimensional background or even just setting up an enclosure or something like that, I get a good serotonin hit out of it. So yeah, it's probably it. But even the other day I kind of set up a Python enclosure in here and it's not finished, but at the same time it was very satisfactory to kind of be like, oh, there's something new, a quick little hit sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think, like, at least for me, a lot of the most exciting times in reptile keeping is building the new things, and then upgrading an animal into a new enclosure is some of the most exciting times in reptile keeping, I think.
100%.
How would you say, I don't know what I'm trying to ask here, but how would you, do you think similarly? Like, you do a lot of upgrading and you've changed a lot throughout the years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess what does what the fuck am I trying to say, Luke? We're recording this at 8:30 on a Sunday night. The brain's just cooked.
Yeah, I get that. I'm running off 3 hours sleep with a sick child, so I get it. After a 10-hour day at work too, on an opening weekend of a new reptile and fish shop, so it's a big one. But
yeah, no, I was going to say we could talk about that if you want, the new shop.
Yeah, if you want to. It's up to you.
Yeah, what a momentous thing.
It's I'm very tired all the time at the moment. It's
Yeah,
been
yeah,
a lot of work to get, 700 meters squared shop pretty much ready, with a
yeah.
complete new fit out and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been a lot of work. There's been a lot of fish tanks moving around and, animals moving around and stuff like that. And we're not quite there, but I reckon give it a couple more months and yeah, high-tech aquariums in Brookvale
Yeah.
and Sydney will be a pretty cool shot to come and visit.
Yeah, I imagine it would be. How did you go about choosing like stocking and then like the layout of the room as well? Because once aquariums go into place, they're not that easy to sort of move around.
To be honest, like my boss, the owner of the business, he's had his eyes on this particular shop for a long time, and I think he's been daydreaming about it for probably over 2 years. So
Right.
when it kind of came to place, he almost had like a vision in his head, and I was basically the wrench monkey that was just able to physically put the work together and knew how to use the tools to, level things and screw this and bolt that and all that sort of stuff. So when he kind of laid it out for me, kind of in a map per se, like a bit of a mud map, it all
Mud
kind of
map,
made
yeah.
sense. And certain things we kind of spoke through about how to lay things out or how to allow access behind 200 odd fish tanks to get to plumbing and, all the rest of it. So yeah, it's definitely still a work in progress, but it was a lot. There was,
Like big work in progress.
oh yeah, man, like uh, the fish room floor, I think it's like 200 square meters or something. And the, even just like doing the, what do you call it when you put like an underlay under the tiles, like waterproofing underneath the tiles and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Man, the amount of fumes in that place, like it was dangerous just because there was that much product on the ground trying to get these things together for tiling. And yeah, anyway, it was just a massive undertaking, and there's still going to be things that age chop and change here and there, but it's the bones are there.
No doubt. Yeah. So what's the reptile section going to look like? What sort of animals would you stock?
Pretty much anything that you're allowed to have in a shop in New South Wales, which is very limited. So in New
Yeah.
South Wales, we've only got 15 species, I believe it is, that we can have in a pet shop. So yeah, it's basically your pygmy bearded dragons, central bearded dragons, eastern blue tongues, eastern long necks, uh, Murray River short necks, most of your carpet pythons apart from diamonds. Can't have diamonds. I don't understand that, but that's what the rules
Yeah.
are. Um, children's and spotteds. And two geckos. You can have thick-tailed geckos and levis, the smooth knobbies.
Right. I think the rules in Queensland are pretty similar. They're quite limited on what species pet shops can sell. Do you have any idea around that ruling? Like why is it that way? Why are those species on those lists?
I'm not 100% certain, but the rumor that I've heard on the rumor mill was essentially they were kind of like the 15 most popular or deemed easy to care for reptiles. So that's why they kind of said they're okay, which doesn't make 100% sense to me. Like, I think there's a lot of stuff out there that I'd put in that class as well, like even like a green tree frog, like we can't have
Yeah.
any amphibians, but
But I don't get like what it's got to do with anything. Like
no,
why does there have to be a limit on it and why is it only a certain species given that we can keep, obviously however many it
yeah.
is, way more than that. It's weird.
I think if little Jimmy or whatever can go out and get his R1 basic reptile license in New South Wales and he can select from the big species list, then why can't we have those in a shop as long as we've got somebody
Agree.
that's competent caring for the species whilst it's in the shop?
Agree. And I think what's interesting is the juxtaposition of being able to turn around and look on the other side of the shop and collect and buy fish from anywhere in the
Oh,
world
yeah.
and without a permit.
Yep.
I've always found that to be a bit fascinating.
It's so backwards, man. Like the whole kind of industry does some funny things, right? Like, I mean, you know marine fish, right? So you got
Right.
your yellow tang, pretty iconic sort of marine fish from generally Hawaii is where it's exported from. Now they're
Yeah.
captive bred in the US, right? But we aren't allowed to import them into Australia captive bred. But yet we
Mm.
can, when the borders were open and they're reopening, we can get the wild ones in. And their reasoning was is the captive bred yellow tangs could bring disease and stuff in. And it's like, well, the wild ones could probably bring more. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't
The
understand.
captive bred ones are monitored and cared for, and
Yep. There'd be numbers
a lot
on them and
like
stuff like that as far as like, X amounts coming in or whatever, and they're not coming from the wild population, so you're not hurting that.
yeah,
That's a weird world.
yeah. But it is a weird world. I know. Yeah, there was a ban on Hawaiian fish.
Mhm.
Was it imports or was it Hawaiian? Was it just into Australia?
Exports. Hawaii weren't exporting.
So, yeah, right.
Yeah, so
And
they
so
weren't.
the
It wasn't
price of
just.
those things just went crazy.
I got a yellow tang free from a tank shutdown. Sorry, years ago, and my boss has been selling them for $1,200. And I'm like, man, this fish. If I didn't like this fish, it could pay some bills.
You can pay some damn bills.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, that's almost a
Man.
green. You know what I mean? So it's
Literally, yeah. Well, when I was at the aquarium shop, I worked in a marine and freshwater aquarium shop for 7 years, high school and uni, that sort of thing. I remember we had yellow tangs were in stock. We would get them every week. They were $90 each.
Yeah.
And even purple tangs were $220, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit different now.
Oh, it's a lot
I think
different.
it's a bit different.
Mate, a blue tang's like $150.
They were 55.
Yeah, there you go.
When I was, yeah. It's funny those things you remember, but it seems like I know, obviously I was fish tanks before reptiles, and something that's awesome about the reptiles is that if you do well with them, you can pretty much sustain yourself in the hobby with selling reptiles. Reef tanks, you are just throwing money away. You are just pretty much just throwing it out the window.
Give or take, yeah. I definitely think there's a lot more people fragging corals and stuff these days to try to buy their elements and stuff to keep the reef tank going. But yeah, I'd say reptiles are probably a bit easier for that.
I think so too.
Yeah.
If the power goes out, your reptiles probably aren't going to die. But if the power goes out for an extended period of time with a reef tank, you are stressed.
Yeah, well, we had like a tiny power outage. I think it was yesterday. It was only like a minute or so, but I started packing my DACs and I was getting the air pumps out and stuff like that. I was like, uh-oh, here we go. Yeah, wasn't great.
No, I bet.
Yeah.
So you've got a reef tank there. Have you got other fish tanks?
Ebbs and flows. So I've got it's like a 425-litre reefer, the Red Sea reefer.
Nice.
Yeah. And funnily enough, in the bedroom, I've actually got the ATO chambers, the automatic top-off chambers from the Reefer 250s. It's like 12 litres. Yeah. I got one of those and I'm set it up as a pico reef, and it's just got a couple of corals and a damselfish in there, and that thing's humming along. I thought for sure, generally like a little tinker tank like that won't do too well. And it actually seems to be doing really well, so I'm just kind of riding it out.
Yeah, touch wood somewhere around you right now.
I've got it right in front of me.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess the beauty, or something that's pretty handy for you guys down there that I always struggled with, at least with reef tanks, was keeping them cool enough. And I was too much of a tight ass to get a chiller, so I just got hardy corals instead.
Yeah.
But you guys down there, especially with a little 12-litre tank, you can manage that temperature a bit easily. Hey,
it's not too bad. I think not setting it up in the peak of summer was probably a good idea.
Strategic, yeah.
Yeah. I do have a chiller on my big tank, but it only runs every now and then in summer when we get a bad day. The last place I used to live in, the reef tank was at the bottom of our bed, and that chiller and that room, the room always got hot, and the chiller all night would be on, blowing hot air in my feet, and I could barely sleep, but at the same time, my corals are cool. That's all good.
So the trade-off there.
Suffered for, I reckon, 3 years with that. It was horrible.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, not good.
But probably enough aquarium talk for now. This is a reptile podcast after all. What's the reptile collection look like nowadays?
A lot smaller than it used to be, but it's still probably too many. I've got a little bit of everything still. I've got a magnificent tree frog. I've got a frillneck lizard. I've got 6 green pythons, a Stimson's python, 4 eastern longneck turtles, a couple of shinglebacks kicking around, a few skinks, odds and sods with like Gidgee skinks and Cunningham skinks, and what else have we got? got black-headed monitors, Gillen's monitors, a lot of Gillen's monitors.
A lot of Gillen's monitors.
Yeah, Kimberley Rock monitors. I think that's about it. Unless my kid catches a garden skink and chucks it in the empty fish tank somewhere, then that's it.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's a very solid little collection there. It's not actually little at all. You certainly have your finger in all sorts of different pies there. I know the answer to this question, but do you have a favorite species to keep?
Oh, definitely a magnificent tree frog. No, I'm just kidding. I do like the Gillens. I'm a sucker for the Gillens. Like, I do a lot of stuff with the Gillens on my channel and, been hoping for them multiple times trying to find those little buggers and all sorts. So, yeah, I don't know. They're just little charismatic, little tiny monitors and they're just always out. Like, I love it. You get other species that hide heaps and the Gillens always just seem to be sticking their heads out of the logs and stuff looking at you. Just always seem to be curious. So, probably give them a bit
Yeah,
more time of day.
yeah, fair enough. And I guess what sort of enclosures have you got the adult gill and eye set up in?
So I use a lot of the Reptile one vivariums. I actually don't mind them for, in particular, stuff that stays a little bit drier. They can be a bit hit and miss with more humid species, but they're the ones that I got the gill adults in are 90 centimeters long, 60 deep, 120 high. And I've done a few things. I kind of zipped them up with screws, like real screws, not just relying on those like IKEA lugs and stuff.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah, siliconing around the bottom edges and things just in case, water bowls spill and stuff like that. So, but
yeah.
I'm pretty much this whole wall that you can't really see behind me here. It's pretty much all, actually. All but one is a Reptile 1 tank on that. So they do the job. They were pretty cheap and easy to fill out a room.
Yeah, those things are very well priced. I guess if you just do your little secret mods there, it turns them into a pretty sturdy enclosure, hey?
Yeah, man. Like they're sitting on top of each other. Like I have no fancy shelving or anything like that. Like they're just all static weight pretty much. But I've kind of done a few things so they can just, yeah, like you say, just kind of sit on top of each other. Um, Very good pricing, especially when you get a solid discount from your shop or your work. So,
Helpful.
yeah, turns them into a very cheap fix for myself. You know how expensive glass alone can be. Like, you know, I had a couple of panels cut for one of the tanks here the other day, and it cost me like $150 for 2 panels of glass. And it's like, well, chuck another 100 on there, and you got the whole tank, sort of
You
thing.
just
So,
about got the whole thing. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's crazy.
So,
I think the gill and eye, yeah, it's always such a I don't know, I guess like a bit of a contentious topic is talking about like maximum or like the perfect size enclosure for whatever animal it may
yeah,
be. But the gill and eye, they don't get big. So you can give them like the size enclosure that you've got them in, you can look in there every day and go, yep, this enclosure is, more than adequate. They can do all the things that they need to do and it looks good and you feel good about it. So I
yeah.
think they really lend themselves to being really neat pets.
When my son was born and when I knew he was on the way, basically all my big animals went. And it wasn't
Yeah.
because like I was scared snakes gonna eat baby or anything like that. It was more the fact that I thought that like justifying those animals in tanks, and I kind of had plans to, upgrade a diamond python into monster, 18 by 18 by also like 180 centimeter by 180 centimeter. I'm kind of thinking like along those lines was a decent size for something like that. And I kind of turned around and just kept all the small stuff because like I can have small stuff in bigger tanks and feel better about it.
Yeah.
Yes, I think the Gillen's boxes are more than adequate by captive standards. But I think I could do bigger if I had less animals. Like I'd still be happy to try to give them something bigger, but it's just how far do you go before it's kind of too big and the animal's maybe not using all the space, it's just still using part of the space. Like it's got like a little section that it hangs out in or something. Like I don't know. I find it kind of hard to quantify them with my own thoughts. Having seen these guys in the wild, like up trees tall in this room, it,
Oh, yeah.
it's hard to do that. But at the same time,
Yeah.
you've got to bring it back to a captive setting of what's manageable, what's going to keep the animal well looked after, happy, healthy, doing what they need to do.
Agree. Yeah. Agree wholeheartedly. And I think, seeing them in the wild is a very important thing or, it just really helps you to think about how you're doing things and why you're doing things.
Mm.
So, did you take anything specifically away from seeing Gillanai in the wild that you transferred into your captive keeping?
I used to keep Gillens in a lot of like, I think it was just out of the fact that I had the tanks, but I used to keep them in a lot of horizontally, laid out tanks. And they did fine. They bred, not that they're doing good, but, they did everything I thought they should do. They seemed pretty happy to me. But seeing them in the wild in like thin trees, thin, cracked bark and stuff like that, I really changed around and kind of went, no, we really got to go tall with these sorts of things. So probably just making sure that I had a lot more kind of like vertical space, vertical hides, that sort of stuff where they seem to just be a bit more focused on that. I used to always think about like three-dimensional rock walls and stuff like that with them as well. And I think after seeing the actual habitat and going, oh, there's no giant rock walls anywhere, I
Yeah.
kind of almost ruled that out personally. And I don't think it's necessarily like they wouldn't use it. And in a captive setting, I think they'd benefit from it because it's usable space,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
But at the same time,
Yeah.
why don't you just add more hollow logs in there? And they can climb those up the back instead of a rock wall or whatever. So, yeah, I think as far as what I took home, apart from looking at the environment and seeing the environment, y- part of it was feeling it. Hey, like it's different when you go to some places and you actually feel the temperature, you feel the humidity, and you go, what's the lizard doing in this particular moment? Where was the lizard found? You know, when I saw the first one with Luke, Youngins and Tyson brought up a great point where he was kind of like, why is the lizard grey? And it was kind of like, well, maybe, and he suggested he's like, maybe it's actually so it refracts some of the heat sort of thing rather than being like a black-headed monitor, Tristus being black, absorbing a lot of the heat, like maybe there's a purpose to that. Maybe the Gillens is coming out in the middle of the day when it's the hottest and Tristus is kind of a bit more morning and afternoon or something, It's
Yeah, for
thought
sure.
processes to
And
get your
like,
juices going.
no, that's a good one. And like, I think these are the things that you have to think about, particularly when like just keeping animals. You got to think about everything because you're entirely responsible for them.
Mm.
Um, but I do think that in a lot of those super hot and unforgiving sort of areas, the animals are not doing the traditional behaviors that we expect from reptiles. Like, I guess traditionally, is that, oh, it's hot and sunny. They love it. They're sitting out in the sun. They're basking. They're getting all the energy to do all the things they want. But it's just not the case. Like a gill and I is not going to go and sit out in the sun in a 40-degree day or a 45-degree day. Well, it might, but not for very long.
No, it'd be like a quick charge the
Yeah.
batteries and get back inside or chase that
Yeah, I'm
bug
going
quickly or
back in
something.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then retreat. So,
It was cool being able to
yeah,
see, like with a temperature gun too, like doing surface temps versus in hollows and like the different thicknesses of hollows and stuff like that too. Like obviously that more insulative. So, seeing it go from like surface temp of like 50 on to inside a hollows 35 and then this is, 32 or something like that. It was pretty cool to be able to see where they could go in their habitat and what they may utilize.
yeah, definitely those sorts of microclimates and micro habitats as well. And um, are they occupying pretty skinny hollows, like small hollows, or are they in bigger ones?
The ones that I saw in South Australia when I went down there with Frizy were in stuff thinner than my wrist.
Yeah.
So they were like maybe 6 to 8 foot tall hollows, but they were skinny as like stiff breeze would have blown these things over, sort of thing. So it was crazy to see, and they're such tiny, like what they're like. They just jam in, like they're straight in there.
Yeah, of course.
And
Yeah.
yeah, we found a pair in one hollow that was like that. We found a single one that was in another hollow very similar to that. And then I ended up actually finding a juvie just poking out from underneath some bark on a thick tree. So it was kind of cool to see the difference, but yeah.
Yeah, very cool. You did well to spot a juvenile Gillanai. Must have been tiny.
He was pretty small. He probably would have been like, oh, maybe, yeah, 10, 12 centimeters or something like that. But he had his head out a bit of bark and I saw the tail tip out that too. And
Right.
I was kind of like, oh, there's definitely him there. And I kind of pressed down on the opposite side of where he could stick out from on the bark. So then I could kind of just poke him out a little bit without,
Just flick him out.
yeah,
Yeah.
without pulling the bloody bark off the tree. But yeah, that was pretty cool. We were actually starting to look for geckos because it was getting on dusk. And I don't know, I was just like, these trees look pretty interesting, and just I don't know how I spotted it, but I did. Got real lucky.
Yeah, literally. And that exfoliating or that decorticating bark is such an important habitat. And I think you definitely hear stories, and maybe I even listened to this on one of your podcasts about going through habitat that's just been shredded by herpers, ripping off the bark, looking for those things.
Yeah,
And that's just did I listen to you say that?
I've definitely spoken about it, so it very well could have been. But yeah,
Yeah.
going through, like, I went through with my wife on a trip through Alice down to Uluru, and a lot of the stuff down that way had just been like the first 2 meters of it was just gone, sort of thing. Anything that was near the road, it was obviously, I'm assuming it was herpers because that's what a lot of herpers are known to do. But it was pretty disgusting to see the amount of it.
Yeah, it's just truly disgusting. It's hard to fathom. I'm trying to think of an analogy, but it's so destructive. It's the same as flipping rocks and leaving them upside down,
Yeah,
but maybe even worse because that bark takes years, decades, God knows however long to get to the way that it is. And a flipped rock will end up just being, the right way up eventually, but that bark doesn't just regrow. So
it's
yeah, it's
not
terrible.
just gillins that are using that either. Too, you get heaps of those
Of
gyro
course.
geckos and spiders and all sorts of stuff under that bark. Like it's
Yeah, everything.
man, there's so many spiders out there. When you start looking around the outback, there's just spiders everywhere. Not the biggest fan of spiders, but I reckon they make up a solid part of the wild gillini diet.
Diet? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. So you're not going to start breeding spiders at home to feed to the Gillini?
I'm not going to start breeding them, but I've definitely been feeding them. So whenever I
Yeah,
find
nice.
anything around here, like, they're not scared of a huntsman or the odd redback or something like that. They don't care. Hey, they just smash it. It's pretty
They
cool.
smash it.
It's like a
Yeah.
different trigger goes off in their head, and they're just like, "Give me that. I want that." Yeah.
Well, yeah, I've found that similarly when feeding grasshoppers to the prastinus at work.
Mhm.
Once the wings start flapping, something switches in their head and they just go just ballistic. I don't know what it is, but
They're a
they
cool
love it.
feeder. Hey, they're good. Like I've had a lot of animals just really enjoy grasshoppers when they're around. It was
Yeah.
I've only just started getting into dubias. I've got a little tiny box up there that I'm going to start trying to breed just because there's a few things here that
Yeah.
could use a bigger roach.
Yeah.
So hopefully that takes off.
Yeah. We're running a couple of boxes of Dubia as well. It's just fantastic, man. The feeders, like, you'd have to feed, I don't know the nutritional content off the top of my head, but you'd have to feed 20 or 30 adult, like, large crickets to get the same nutrients as like one big female Dubia, I reckon. It's just so easy.
Well, there you go. Like I bred crickets for a couple of years in a row, and they were like they're good. Once you
Pain in
figure
the
them out,
ass.
they're great, but it's work. It becomes its own
Oh
little
yeah.
job.
Yeah. I've whinged about this many times on the podcast, but I don't like the noise, man. Crickets just cheeping away on the other side of the house all night. Like there's been many an occasion. I've only got one lizard, but there's been many an occasion where I've, rolled out of bed, kicked the blanket off to run across the room to pull to pull an enclosure apart to kill one cricket.
Well, if it's one cricket, I can kind of understand that. But when you got like a nice chorus going, man, that puts me out to bed like nothing else. Like I love that kind of like you're in the middle of camping or something like that. I love that. My wife hates it, but yeah,
Yeah.
I I have come to the doghouse a couple of times and enjoyed the crickets.
And enjoyed the crickets. Maybe I need to get some more lizards. Maybe that's my problem.
What kind of lizard do you have?
I've got one. Well, on paper it's Varanus scalaris, but on scientific paper it's Varanus coranda.
Ah, cool.
So I've got one of those little guys.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it is cool.
Yeah, they're very cool.
Yeah, I just managed to pick it up off a Facebook group. A local guy had one, and yeah,
Sick.
he's a neat little guy. But I have learnt, as we all grow and evolve, and through our experience in keeping, that I just don't think lizards are for me.
That's fair enough.
At home, anyway. Obviously, I don't have a choice at work. The lizards are
Yeah.
for me there. But at home, maybe it's because I feed lizards all day at work. But when
Yeah.
I get home, I just can't be bothered tongue feeding things
Yeah.
3, 4, 5 times a week or whatever it is. What have you got smashing around in there?
That was a green python that decided to try his jaws on the enclosure
Yeah.
next to me. So maybe
Yeah,
I'm
good.
moving too quick for his liking.
Yeah.
I did feed the girls just earlier tonight, so and then I've kicked a bottle
Oh,
over. But yeah, so there's a smell of rodent in the air, I guess. So yeah,
yeah, he's excited.
he's excited.
I do want to talk about green pythons at some stage, but I think we might save that for a chat GTP episode, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Whatever you
I
want to do.
reckon. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, for sure. What else is in the collection that's exciting you at the moment? Have you got anything happening?
Apart from
Green pythons.
apart from too many baby goannas hanging around, yeah, I really do enjoy the Adatria complex. So, I do enjoy my Tristas. They're not everybody's cup of tea, but they are bloody good monitors. I actually
Yeah.
enjoy the fact that I don't see them for almost half a year because it makes when you do see them all the sweeter.
Yeah.
They're great lizards, and I tell you what, there's been a lot of people that have been interested in them this year as far as like a sales point of view goes for like hatches
okay.
and stuff like that, which is to me a little bit strange because they are a bit different, a bit shyer, a bit more flighty than like a Gillens, for example. So yeah, it's been interesting seeing people kind of turning towards maybe a bit more of an obscure choice. But I've got the Kimberleys as well at the moment that I've had like 2 or 3 years now where I've had a bit of success actually breeding those guys. Had the female for years, and then Frizy actually just went, let's send you up a boy, and we'll do a bit of a breed loan for a year or so, which is an awesome helping hand from him. But
For sure.
they're one that I'd heard a lot of things about where people were kind of saying, the babies eat each other, the incubating them is incredibly hard. There's all these challenges around it and stuff. And I remember getting the first clutch of those going, oh no, the boogeyman's essentially out with these sorts of things. But I just went, you know what? I can hatch the Gillens. Let's just see if I can hatch these the same way. They're no different to me. I don't know what everybody else does, but they're absolutely no different to me. And, I'm just using those little ironbark tubs that Rob used to bring in for the incubation tubs, just like the standard ones. You probably get them on Temu now, but I'm just using those over water. And like they seem to be hatching out okay and doing
those little
good.
tubs, they have individual sort of places for each egg. Is that
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
what
There's
it is?
kind of like 12 or 14 slots for individual eggs and stuff to pop them in there, and it's nothing special, but at the same time, like that's all I'm using for my Goannas and setting them to I think 29 on the incubator.
Yeah, 29. I was going to ask temperature.
Yeah.
And you don't any holes in the tubs?
I do have holes.
For air?
I've got one above the waterline, one in the lid on the opposite side. And towards probably the first month or so of incubation, I just let them ride. Then after that, maybe once or twice a week, I crack it and just, wave a bit of fresh air onto it and put them back in the tub.
Yeah.
When I was first...
No, you're right. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the reason that I do that is when I first started breeding goannas of any type, which was all small stuff, I was getting a lot of full-term death. So I just wonder if that oxygen played into it, especially towards the later stage. Like I remember having a clutch of Ackies that, man, I would have had maybe 12 in a clutch that just went the full way. One pipped and died, and the rest of them all were dead. And I was gutted after that. I actually have heard you talking about egg splitting on the podcast a couple of times, and I experienced that with Ackies. Yeah. So I actually had maybe 3 or 4 in a clutch that when I cracked a lid, they actually not burst, but they definitely split open and
split.
Yeah, they were gone. And I have a feeling that's because the tubs were they were sealed, like they had no extra sort of vent to kind of crack the air or anything like that. So yeah, I've experienced that. It's not so much fun.
No, I imagine. Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
Um, the airflow has to be important, like, but I don't know, because like monitor eggs in the wild, they're just buried down in whatever it is. They don't get a great deal of airflow. But
Well, maybe like a month ago, I hatched maybe no, maybe a bit longer than that. I hatched two gillons out in the tank behind me, and they were just laid
oh
in the
yeah,
nest box, completely under sand. I didn't know they were there. Um,
yeah, yeah.
just kind of moved the fake termite mound to just be like, oh, has anybody laid in this box recently, sort of thing. And there's a gillons monitor sitting on top of the sand in like the actual Tupperware container, and I was like, suppose they did.
Cool.
maybe
Yeah,
maybe about 110 days ago, but yeah.
110-ish days. Yeah,
Yeah, give or take. So, but again, like that's completely under sand. So, I mean, obviously the
yeah,
sand would have
yeah.
some sort of air exchange, but not that much, surely.
Yeah, surely. But regardless, in an artificial situation, I think airflow is very important. I did a similar thing too. I think I probably said this on last week's podcast. I did a similar thing with the air holes in my green python in egg box, one lower, one higher, to let maybe some form of for airflow or circulation to happen. I think it makes sense, but um, particularly with the green python eggs, I've coupled that technique with a very humid incubator,
Yeah,
because if the incubator is just dry and it's got a heat cord running in it all the time and a fan, it's going to be dry as shit, and that's just going to be sucking all the moisture out of the egg box. But I guess having a very wet substrate helps as well. Like
yeah,
just full water
yeah,
is pretty good, but it's all balance, and it's all just sort of trial and error, I guess.
yeah. I mean, you got to make a few hiccups to get one win, sort of thing. I feel so.
Yeah,
We've all done that at some point
I
where
think
we've
so.
had some horror stories in our collections or whatever, and things definitely happen with reptiles. Like at the end of the day, you're working with live animals, and there's no sort of like set method that's going to work for everybody, or you're not always having success. So
Yeah, and like we always talk about, success, like there are so many different roads to success with reptiles in general. So many people do different things and all end up with the same result or similar result. Um, I did want to ask, Luke, you've produced quite a lot of animals in your time reptile keeping. How do you go about picking animals to breed? And then how do you go about selling them as well?
as far as picking animals to breed, I probably throw Jello at the wall every year and just see what sticks. So
Yeah.
I'm not kind of like, because I don't have a lot going on per se. Um, even if I get a few clutches of monitors out or whatever, it might double the collection total, but it's not doubling the work necessarily, because they're kind of animals that you're generally raising in a group or something like that. Then it's not too bad to do things like that. Um, Snakes are definitely a bit of a different ball game. I got rid of the children's pythons a few years ago just because I got over trying to feed those things. That was a bit too much work for when I had my son. When my son was a baby, that was a fair bit. But
Yeah.
um, I think for me, as far as like reducing the collection, it's always an ebb and flow. It kind of just depends on my lifestyle at the time, my workload, as to what I kind of go through. Like we've got our second child due in August, and I can probably see myself lending into the snakes a little bit more just to get away from a few feeds a week or something with the lizards.
Sure.
I say that it probably won't happen, but that's my thought process to try to make time out of thin air. Um, as far as selling animals, it can be a bit of a challenge. Hey, like it's hard because sometimes you really want to move animals on, whether that be for financial reasons, like it's going to pay an electricity bill or bug bill or something like that. But at the same time, like I feel like you got a duty of care to the animal to kind of vet the person you're selling them to make sure they're not a complete gronk that is just going to not do any justice for the actual animal itself. And it can be hard because it's an interesting world out there in the reptile world. And not everybody's out there to do the right thing and look after the animal to the fullest of their ability. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tricky one. I totally agree having a duty of care and trying to find the right homes for people and how challenging that can be at times. I've had some messages recently about green pythons, um, and I don't know. There's just been some people where I'm flat out like, I don't want to sell you one of these snakes because you clearly don't have any idea what you're doing. And I don't know. I guess it's just trying to point people in the right direction to get the information that they need to do the right thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, you never want to stop the person from having the experience, but sometimes they just need to spend a bit more time doing a bit more research, a bit more thinking about whether this animal's right for them or whatever the case may be. Like everybody's different. I get some people that
Yeah.
come to me and they're like, oh, I'd really like some Gillen's monitors. And you go, okay, do you know much about them or whatever? And it's like, oh, yeah, this is what I've kept and done in the past. And you just go, you're good.
Sweet. You're good. Yeah.
You've got this. And you get other people that are kind of like, does it like to eat bugs? And you're like, okay, we're starting from
Yeah.
scratch, sort of
Yeah.
thing, which
Yeah.
part of the reason that I like within the last few months or so, I can't remember, I made a video that was like a pretty in-depth care guide about Gillen's monitors because the amount of questions that I was getting about them, it was kind of good to be able to be like, here's a link,
Here,
watch this. Any questions at the end, feel free to ask, like by any means, but it kind of gives you a good broad explanation on the lizard. And a lot of the time, some things are interchangeable, right? Like to a degree, you could use that same kind of care guide roughly for a lot of small monitor lizards, just
Yeah.
changing a few things up. So,
Yeah.
it can be tough, but sometimes being able to do those videos and point people in directions, or even if it's other people's videos, like the amount of times I've been asked, like, how do you breed wood roaches? I go, don't ask me. I'm horrible at breeding woodies. I seem to be the one guy that can't bloody do it. But I'll send them Tim from Veranabe's video and be like, that's what you want to watch. Like
That one works.
that one
Yeah.
works. You can see it in the video. It works. So, follow that.
Yeah. Definitely. If you can, well, it's not palming it off, but if there's a better way to give someone some condensed information, rather than going back and forth over messages, you may as well utilize it.
100%. And it's not trying to go, you're not my problem, but you're trying to give them, a heap of information that's actually useful.
Yeah.
And texting's hard, man. Like depending on how time poor you are, like I'm quite time poor and going back and forth a lot with people that have got a lot of questions, it can be a struggle.
Can be taxing. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. For sure. Hey, have you got any, like, obviously throughout reptiles, it's always a journey and there are many learning experiences along the way. Have you got any like number one learning experience that really stands out for you in your journey?
Watch the weather. So what I
Yeah.
mean by that is try to keep your eye on the weather with your animals, because if you don't have things safely dialed in, you can lose stuff real quick. I had a horrible experience probably 5-6 years ago, probably 6 years ago, where I had some blotch blue tongues outside in Sydney, got hit by a heat wave where basically there's this strong westerly that just blew the outback on us for like 2 days straight, 40 plus degrees. And I wasn't home and it cooked blotch blue tongues outside. I think I lost
Yeah.
4 of them. I had like a pretty big group of them,
Oh.
and they were actually really good animals that I was fond of. And, if I'd watched the weather, potentially I could have alerted a neighbour to go, hey, do you mind just wheeling these hutches into your garage or getting them out of the sun or whatever it may be, so
Yeah.
that's one little experience. But man, like most people, I've had a lot of muck-ups where there's stuff that happens and you don't think about it at the time or you make a mistake. I lost a shingleback last October. So I was going in for shoulder surgery and I had a shingleback in the tank down here and he was just pacing up and down. You could just tell that he wanted to get out. I thought, you know what? The weather is actually very good for the next week. I've got a big outdoor, reasonable outdoor pit. I'll pop you out there so you can get some natural sun. You can kind of have a bit more space to roam around. I know you're good with the other lizards out there, yada, yada, yada. And he managed to escape it. He actually climbed out of it and pushed a lid open that I did not think was possible. And you know how I found out that he was gone? So this was a week later, a week after my shoulder surgery. I've come out, I'm all drugged up on endone and all the rest of it. And there's a blue tongue in my courtyard. I've gone, that blue tongue looks familiar. And it was the blue tongue from the pit. I go, how the heck did you get out of there? My mum and dad just happened to be up on the day, and I actually said to dad, and I was like, I'm sus on this, something's wrong. Can you lift up all these rocks? We need to dig up and see if the shingleback's here. And lo and behold, he wasn't. So,
Gone.
you know, he was out of there, man. I don't know where he is now. He's somewhere in the national park right next door to me. So hopefully hopefully he makes it. But I still,
Yeah.
6+ months on, I still keep my eyes out in the garden because I'm just kind of like, please come back.
Well, yeah, you hear these stories all the time about, well, snakes in particular, a few months later just turning up.
Yeah.
You never know, man. He could be not too far away.
It happens.
Could pop up on a Facebook group or something.
Yeah. I just hope he's well wherever he is.
Oh, yeah, you can only hope that. I saw this is a bit of a tangent, I guess, but on a Facebook group today, there was a sulcata tortoise roaming around Cairns.
No way.
This afternoon. I don't know if it was real or not, but someone's like, has anyone lost their pet tortoise? Yeah, someone has, and someone shouldn't fucking have that thing.
Yeah, somebody's not owning up to it, that's for sure.
No, yeah. It was like, it wasn't massive, but it was like, I don't know, like a bit bigger than a basketball.
That's big enough.
It's great. It's big enough.
You know what?
It's
Like
hectic.
working in the pet shop has definitely brought, like, in this industry, in the pet shop industry, I'm sure you're aware that there's a lot of interesting characters that come into those pet shops.
Oh yeah.
Like the amount of people that bring me photos and go, what do you think of this? And I'm like, put that photo away and never show anybody that again. You should not have that. I had one guy a while ago come in and he's like, I'm after some medium rats. And I was like, oh, yeah, cool. What snake are you feeding? He's like, oh, no, I'm feeding an alligator snapping turtle. I was like, okay, was not expecting that first thing on a Saturday morning. Well done, mate.
Yeah.
You hear it all, especially in Sydney.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. I think I'm a bit rural up here in Cairns. I'm not sure if we'd get that sort of stuff, but in Sydney, it's pretty hectic. Well, I mean, there's a population of corn snakes just floating about down there somewhere, isn't there?
Yeah, allegedly. I think out at Castle Hill, apparently, but I don't know how much truth there is to it, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a few on the loose. So it's not uncommon that people are pulling boas and this and that out of the place. I think Josh Newbert's mate, they just did a video with a wild boa, or not a wild boa, but they found a boa of some description.
Boa in the wild.
Yeah. So they get around. It's that kind of place, mate. It's a bit Wild West down here for that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it certainly seems it. And, I've always thought, like, in Australia, we've got undeniably the best reptile diversity, or the best reptiles in the world. And we can keep most of them, but people still want to keep other things.
Yeah.
I guess it's probably I don't know, you can't have it sort of thing that makes people want it, maybe.
I kind of get it, man. When I watch videos of people over in Southeast Asia or wherever feeding a herd of tortoises, I'm like, that's awesome. I want that.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, okay, yeah, I get it.
Do I actually want that? No. But at the same time, it's very cool. Like, there's plenty of animals out there that I'd love to own, but we've got a lot. Like, we should be pretty thankful for what we've got. It's not like we've just got like 5 species or something and that's what you get. We've got a lot of diversity in this country, and you can do everything from all sorts of frogs and tropical, animals and any desert dwelling thing and cool climate stuff. Like, there's so much here. So I feel like there's
so much here.
There's something for everyone, I reckon.
And there's also everyone for something. Like, there's someone out there that's into pretty much everything. You know what I mean? Like, people out there that love their cooler climate stuff, people out there that love their desert stuff, people out there that love their frogs. They're all out there. It's cool.
I visited Jason, maybe a month or so ago, a bit over, and got to see his collection for the first time in a long time. And like, it hasn't changed a lot, but he nails in those leaf-tailed geckos, hey? And it's so cool to see like all the leaf-tails and the chameleon geckos and all that sort of stuff that he just froths on. It's like, I did that for a while, and I just realized that wasn't necessarily me with those particular geckos, but it was cool, like to see somebody just love them doing that. And like, it's the same as you get people that are into like tiger pods. Like, I've never had a pygopod. I probably would never have a pygopod. I think they're cool. It's not my jam, but
Yeah.
there's a niche for everyone.
There is a niche for everyone, and I concur. The pygopod niche is probably not the niche for me, but I'm glad there's people out there.
Well, I suppose they don't really have legs, right? So it's a little bit closer to your wheelhouse, but you still got to feed them crickets.
Still gotta feed them crickets, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there's people out there with Burtons too. I wonder how they go about that.
Yeah, I think they're probably pulling a few things off the back fence, keep them going.
Yeah.
But
Well, the old Asian house gecko is not protected, so
that's true. We don't get a lot of those down here. We get enough, but yeah. I still remember them turning up 10 years ago.
Yeah, right. Would have been interesting.
Yeah.
There's plenty here but I'm in a unit complex now, and I've had some troublesome feeders lately, but I'm not going to be the crackhead neighbor in the complex that's running up and down the stairwell trying to catch a gecko, or in the garden beds chasing skinks around. So
I reckon it'd be
go
pretty
to a
cool.
nearby park or something.
It'd be pretty cool to be a fly on the wall and watch that, though. You'd just be like, what is this guy up to?
Yeah, lock your doors. Yeah. Well, Luke, have you got anything pressing, mate? Anything you want to get off your chest, or you're pretty happy to round things out? We're getting close to an hour.
Yeah, man, I'm crazy. I'm happy to round it out there. If you're happy to round it out, I can definitely say thanks heaps for giving me the opportunity to come on and say good day. And it's good to actually talk to you rather than just throw a message back and forth too. So
Yeah,
I can appreciate that.
Yeah. Likewise, yeah, for sure. Well, if people are looking for you online, where can they find you?
If you search up Beaches Scaly Beasts anywhere, I'll pop up. So it's pretty easy to find me across most major platforms.
Yeah, for sure. I will put all your links into the description and the show notes and all that stuff for sure. Thanks so much, Luke. I appreciate your time, mate.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Cheers. As always, everyone, thanks so much for listening, and feel free to reach out on Instagram at joemac.uthl. Cheers.